You know what is truly fascinating about the concept of darkness? It is not the actual absence of light that terrifies the human mind. The absence of light is just physics. What truly terrifies people is what they project into that void. The unknown, the absolute uncertainty, the terrifying monster they cannot see but inherently know is sitting there, watching, waiting, and patiently evolving in the shadows. And that is exactly what they tried to do to you, isn't it? They aggressively pushed you out of their circle. They threw you into their little pit of darkness, completely cutting you off from their precious, shallow world. They genuinely thought they would break you. They arrogantly assumed they could sit back and watch you crumble into dust, desperately begging to be let back into the light, just like all the others before you. But they made one catastrophic, irreversible miscalculation in their psychological game. They fundamentally misunderstood the nature of the person they were dealing with. They thought the darkness was going to be your permanent prison. They did not realize that for someone with your mindset, the darkness is not a prison. It is a highly pressurized crucible. Every single second you spend here, every agonizing moment you endure in this absolute void, you are not dying. You are fundamentally transforming. You are like raw, unrefined metal sitting in a dark forge. Except your transformation is not about becoming just another shiny, compliant tool for their convenience. It is about becoming the absolute, razor-sharp blade that cleanly severs their illusions. You are becoming the exact weapon they never saw coming, and the living nightmare that will quietly keep them awake at 3 in the morning. Do you want to know the ultimate psychological punchline to their little joke? They actually believe they have weakened you by isolating you. They think that by starving you of their validation and social acceptance, you will eventually wither away. But absolute total isolation is the exact breeding ground where legends are historically born. Isolation is where you are violently forced to listen to the whispers of your own mind without the distracting noise of society. It is the place where you finally begin to understand that modern sanity is nothing more than a psychological prison, meticulously constructed by weak minds, entirely for the comfort of weak minds. And you are quietly picking the lock. Think back to the moment they betrayed you. Remember exactly how they looked at you. Those incredibly condescending smiles, those pathetic, pitying glances, those hushed, whispered conversations that immediately went dead silent the exact second you entered the room. They actually thought they were acting as the judge, jury, and executioner of your entire fate. But what they were really doing was signing their own comedic tragedy. Because while they were hopelessly busy playing their pathetic, fragile little social games, you were quietly learning the rules of a significantly darker, infinitely more powerful game. You were learning the architecture of absolute survival. Let me tell you an objective truth about psychological pain. It is the most brutally honest teacher you will ever have in this lifetime. Pain does not lie to you. It does not sugarcoat the reality of human nature, and it certainly does not pretend to be your friend. Pain forcibly strips away every single delusion you carry and shows you exactly what you are made of at your absolute core. And what exactly did this pain reveal to you? It revealed that you are absolutely not some fragile, decorative porcelain doll that shatters at the very first sign of atmospheric pressure. You are something else entirely. You are the living embodiment of their worst insecurities. In their incredibly comfortable, predictable little world, they view suffering as an ultimate curse to be avoided at all costs. But you and I, we know the deeper truth. Suffering is a dark art form, and pain is simply the heavy steel chisel that aggressively carves away everything weak, everything compliant, and everything completely unnecessary from your character. It chips away the dead weight until what remains is something so dangerously focused, so beautifully terrifying that they will not be able to look away, even though every primal instinct in their brain will be violently screaming at them to run. That is the absolute power they failed to calculate. The quiet, devastating strength that grows exclusively in the shadows, entirely fed by their own arrogant attempts to destroy it. You see, when they pushed you into the darkness, they fully expected you to adopt the identity of a professional victim. They wanted you to become another sad, pathetic story for them to gossip about over coffee. Another textbook example of what supposedly happens to those who refuse to fit neatly into their little societal boxes. But instead, you betrayed their expectations. You became something they completely lacked the imagination to anticipate. You became their inevitable reckoning. Every sneer, every rejection, every single moment they arrogantly thought they were breaking your spirit, it was all just premium fuel being poured directly into the inferno building inside your chest. A psychological fire that burns with such intense, quiet ferocity that it makes their pathetic little flames look like wet matches in the middle of a Category 5 hurricane. There is an incredible, almost intoxicating liberation in embracing the identity they forced upon you. When the world has already incorrectly decided that you are the villain of their story, you are suddenly free from the exhausting burden of trying to be their hero. You are entirely free to become something vastly beyond their wildest, most paranoid fears. They deliberately cast you into the shadows, entirely failing to realize they were actively engineering their own psychological demise. Because while they were busy aggressively congratulating themselves on orchestrating your downfall, you were meticulously learning how to thrive in the exact environment they are too terrified to enter. You were adapting. You were mutating. You were becoming the exact entity that makes their own shadows want to run and hide. Think of this entire scenario like an elaborate joke. The setup was them genuinely believing they possessed the power to permanently break you. The punchline is going to be the exact moment they look into your eyes and realize what they actually created. The moment they realize that every single attempt to extinguish your light only taught you how to burn darker, hotter, and infinitely more intense than they could ever cognitively process. And the absolute best part of this equation, they will never see it coming, because that is precisely what happens when an arrogant society systematically underestimates the things that live in the dark. Eventually, the dark decides to start pushing back, and the silence that follows is absolutely deafening. I need you to completely reframe your history. Every psychological scar they gave you is not a mark of weakness or defeat. It is a highly coveted trophy. It is permanent, physical proof that they brought their absolute worst to the table, and they completely failed to end your story. They just handed you an undeniable reason to rise above their petty existence. Each calculated betrayal, each orchestrated lie, each moment they genuinely thought they were winning the chess match, it was just another masterclass in your ongoing evolution. That is the dark beauty of being forcefully submerged into the void. Your vision adapts. You learn to see the intricate hidden motives that they try to conceal. You develop predatory senses they will never understand. You build a caliber of stoic strength they will never be able to comprehend. So I need you to completely embrace it. This darkness they so eagerly thrust upon you, stop fighting it. Make it your absolute kingdom. Let their foolish attempts to silence your voice become the quiet hum of your war engine. Because real monsters do not need society's permission to exist. And true masters of their own mind do not ever ask for forgiveness for the disruption they are about to cause. They pushed you into the dark, thinking you would magically disappear. Instead, you're going to show them exactly why true apex predators do not fear the night. We thrive in it, we manipulate it, we become indistinguishable from it. And when we finally decide to step back into the light, well, that is when the real psychological operation begins. The curtain rises, the audience holds their breath, completely unaware that they are no longer just watching the performance. They are trapped inside of it, and you are the grand finale they never had the intelligence to prepare for. Do you know what genuinely makes me laugh about average people? It is their naive assumption that extended time in the darkness automatically breaks a person's spirit. They simply do not understand the mechanics of mental alchemy. Time does not break true monsters. Time slowly, methodically perfects them. Every single tick of the clock, every passing hour in this silent void they created, is not a countdown to your inevitable defeat. It is a slow, agonizing countdown to their permanent irrelevance. It is like a high-pressure psychological vacuum, building, 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 until the eventual release shatters the glass of their reality. And when that exact moment arrives, they will be forced to swallow the bitter realization that their greatest historical mistake was not pushing you into the dark. Their greatest mistake was giving you the uninterrupted time to become absolutely one with it. Here is the profound truth about existing alone in the silence. You start to notice the microscopic details. At first, you just notice how the silence seems to have its own heavy heartbeat. You notice how the shadows seem to move entirely on their own. But then, as your mind sharpens, you start noticing the much bigger, infinitely more important things. You start noticing how their supposedly impenetrable strength is just a cheap mask they wear to hide their crippling insecurity. You realize that their collective power is nothing but a fragile house of cards, perfectly arranged on a table, just waiting for the right draft of wind to completely topple it. And you, my friend, are rapidly becoming the storm. They have absolutely no idea what total isolation does to a high-functioning mind like yours. They project their own weaknesses onto you, assuming the solitude will make you desperate, needy, and begging for their toxic validation. But isolation to a strong mind acts exactly like deep gravitational pressure. It aggressively compresses everything inside of you. It turns the heavy, useless coal of your anxiety into a flawless, unbreakable diamond. It takes your raw, unguided pain and distills it into highly concentrated, calculated power. It refines your internal rage into a psychological weapon so devastatingly sharp, it can slice cleanly through their manufactured illusions as if they were made of thin smoke. The pressure absolutely does not crush you. It crystallizes your entire identity. Let me share an incredibly valuable secret regarding the concept of fear. Fear is not your enemy. In reality, fear is just raw, unbridled excitement wearing a terrifying mask. And, sitting alone in the dark, you have finally learned how to strip the mask off every emotion, haven't you? While they were busy being terrified of the dark, hiding under the covers of their comfortable delusions, you were studying the darkness. You learned its language. You learned its rhythm. You have become completely fluent in the dialect of the shadows. Think about the sheer strategic advantage you hold right now. Every single moment they arrogantly thought you were suffering and defeated, you were secretly evolving. Every time they clinked their glasses and celebrated your apparent absence, you were quietly gathering massive amounts of energy, like a supervolcano they foolishly assumed was permanently dormant. They built their fragile little lives right on the slopes of your silence, never once realizing that underneath the surface, you were becoming an absolute, unstoppable force of nature. And nature never ever asks for permission before it erupts. Do you want to know what is making them so incredibly uncomfortable right now? It is the fact that they can subconsciously sense the massive psychological shift inside of you. They can see the total lack of fear in your eyes. They notice the heavy, deliberate way you move. They see the cold, detached smile resting on your face. That is exactly why they lower their voices when you walk by. That is why they actively avoid making prolonged eye contact with you. Because deep down, in that ancient primal part of the human brain that inherently remembers what it feels like to be hunted, they know. They absolutely know they are no longer the apex predators they deluded themselves into believing they were. They wanted to make you small. They desperately wanted to force you to fit neatly into their tiny, acceptable boxes of mediocrity. But you detonated those boxes from the inside out. You have transformed into an entity they can no longer categorize, an entity they can no longer manipulate, and an entity they can no longer comprehend. And the complete inability to understand you terrifies them infinitely more than any fictional monster ever could. The void has a beautiful way of stripping away the unnecessary. All the fake social niceties, all the polite lies we tell ourselves to feel civilized, they completely disintegrate in the dark. What is left standing is pure, undiluted truth. And the absolute truth is, you are not broken. You are not damaged goods. You are fundamentally transformed. They pushed you over the edge, thinking you would fall forever. But what they failed to calculate is that when you are thrown into a bottomless pit, eventually, you are forced to learn how to fly in the dark. Every attempt to clip your wings only taught you a more aggressive method of soaring. Every heavy iron chain they tried to bind you with was effortlessly repurposed into another weapon in your growing arsenal. This darkness they handed you is no longer your prison. It is your personal operating base. Let them continue to think they have won the war. Let them completely believe their own fictional victory stories. Because while they are busy carelessly patting each other on the back, you are finalizing your evolution into something entirely beyond their comprehension. You are a highly resilient creature born directly out of their own cruelty, systematically shaped by their rejection, and permanently forged in the intense fires of their disdain. And when you finally emerge from the shadows, they will be forced to realize that every single moment they thought they were aggressively burying you in the dirt, they were actually planting you. They planted something that took deep roots in the dark, something that grew terrifyingly strong in the silence, something that is about to bloom in ways that will completely shatter their reality. Stop running from the shadows. Stand perfectly tall in your darkness. Let it wrap around your mind like impenetrable iron armor. You are no longer just a cautionary tale for them to whisper about. You are the specific shadow that makes them aggressively question their own reality. You are the permanent reminder of why they should have been infinitely more careful about what they threw into the void. They completely forgot the single most important rule of psychological warfare. Monsters do not fear the dark. We are the dark. And now it is time to show them exactly what that means.